To truly understand the situation is to be aware of the abundance of what's available. Today we're going to discuss the antithesis to the Tito's syndrome, the Tito's protocol. And what's needed, according to the experts, is preventative intervention. And that is anchored, the foundational piece of that is what I call preventative interventional technologies. This is a combination of very, very specific ingredients and nutritional technologies combined with both old and new world approaches. As we talked about before, the Tito's syndrome stands for toxicity, deficiency, overweight, and stress. And it is not those four things individually that's so deadly and so devastating. It is the interconnectivity of those four cofactors working together. You see, nobody had ever been able to come up with a protocol to attack the situation because the situation had never been defined in its magnitude. Fortunately, this protocol has now appeared, and we understand that by combining specific cofactors and that also interconnect and actually magnify their force more than even the situation itself, that's why we're so encouraged that now we have a solution. The single most important nutrient that the human body needs that's completely misunderstood, and certainly was misunderstood by me, and that is protein. On my recent television show, I interviewed Dr. Michael Colgan, who's arguably the world's greatest authority on proteins. Everything from animal proteins to fish proteins to chicken to turkeys, seaweed to algae to pea proteins, vegan proteins. And I wanted to read just a couple of excerpts from this interview to give you the perspective from Dr. Colgan's point of view as to why protein is so misunderstood and why many people think that they know about protein and in fact they don't. I asked Dr. Colgan about this and he said, I started working on proteins in the 70s and it was even then considered to be a common food. They had no conception that protein is actually the most complicated nutrient that we eat. Every working unit in the body is a protein. All your enzymes, the hemoglobin that carries your oxygen to your genes, every muscle cell, all your organ cells, all your brain cells are made of different proteins. The human body makes, this is astounding, 350,000 different proteins. They're all different. This blew me away. I thought, maybe there are 50 different proteins. 350,000 different proteins in the body? Are you kidding me? That's unreal. And yet most people don't even understand what proteins do, how important they are. They're not just for muscle. This is another thing Dr. Colgan taught me. If you took the dry weight of the human body, 50% of what would be left is protein. It's so much more important than just for our muscles. As he said, it's for our brain, our connective tissue. It becomes so critical. Dr. Colgan says when you look at the areas of the world where soy is the major protein, people are very low in muscle weight, they don't live a long time, and it's not that the body cannot cope. The body can cope, but it ages the body quite fast because the amino acid profile of soy protein is not particularly adapted to the human system. So soy protein, which is consumed and we would think it's really, really healthy, is actually not healthy at all for us. Also, if you lose muscle as you age, your body cannot pump the blood enough to your brain, so it gets short of oxygen. So you put yourself in double jeopardy of both a heart attack and stroke by losing your muscle. See, there's a disease that Dr. Colgan educated me about called sarcopenia. It starts at age 25, and basically we lose 1% of our lean muscle mass every year starting at age 25. And unless you have an incredible, extraordinary source of protein every single day, then no matter what you do, you're still going to continue to lose muscle, even if you're working out. Ladies and gentlemen, protein, my goodness, it is so critically important to the human body. And not all proteins are created equally, not even non-soy proteins. I'm holding in my hand, in this jar, magic. This is one of the most important catalysts to the protocol. This is whey protein from New Zealand. Now, why is it different? Why can't we just go down to the store and buy whey protein in North America? Well, you can, but the problem is that the whey proteins from North America are pasteurized. And in the process of pasteurization, we actually break the bonds, those long chain amino acid profile bonds that Dr. Kogan was talking about. Well, in New Zealand, they use a high filtration, low temperature process where the protein is still together. Now, in addition, in New Zealand, those cattle only eat grass. They do not eat corn. Now, why is corn bad? Because corn is not native to a cow. And when a cow ingests corn, what happens is their stomach actually begins to explode. It destroys their immune system. So they shot them with antibiotics. Now, all of a sudden, they realized that not only were the antibiotics helping the sick animals, but they gained weight faster. Then they give them growth hormone. They don't use that in New Zealand. Because those cows only eat grass, they don't need antibiotics, they don't need growth hormone, they age naturally. So the protein that's coming out of these cows is the purest and best in the world. So in the new preventative interventional technologies, what has happened is they've actually enhanced Mother Nature, not taken away from it in conventional processing. So what did they add to make the protein even more effective? Well, one of the concepts that I've talked about before is it's not what you eat or drink or breathe, it's what you actually absorb. And the protein is a very complicated, a big molecule. So one of the things you'd want to add to your protein is an enzyme called protease. And what protease's job is to do is to take the big protein molecule and break it down into these tiny particles. They're called peptides. Why is that important? Because it allows the body to assimilate, to absorb it at much, much higher levels. Now, another thing that you'd want to add to the protein to make it more available to the body is something called a prebiotic fiber. You've all heard of probiotic fiber. You've seen the commercials on TV. I have an upset stomach, I'm going to take a probiotic fiber. But it's the prebiotic fiber that is, instead of procedural intervention like a probiotic is, a prebiotic fiber is actually preventative in nature. What it allows the body to do is make massive amounts of good flora, which helps the body to absorb nutrients, especially protein. So by adding that to your whey protein from New Zealand, you're going to make this even more powerful as a cofactor within the whey protein. The last thing, or one of the last things that you want to add, is trace minerals. Now, some of you may be familiar with trace minerals. Those are not iron and magnesium and calcium. Those are things like molybdenum and boron and selenium. And just one of those trace minerals, which are part actually of the periodic table, you want together to add about 70 trace minerals to anything that you're consuming, but just one in particular called selenium is a critical component in allowing the body to actually cleanse itself of the toxins and the impurities that we know are in us. Now, why is selenium so important? Selenium is so important because one of the amino acids that's preserved in this New Zealand protein is called cysteine. And what cysteine's job is to take the body's naturally occurring, what I call toxin hunters that pull toxins apart, called glutathione, and it magnifies, increases the amount of glutathione that's available to the human body, which we desperately need to fight against toxicity. What does selenium do? Selenium is a cofactor for cysteine to actually speed up and magnify the impact of the cysteine to make even more glutathione. So for example, if you go and buy a undenatured, meaning a non-pasteurized New Zealand protein, that would be great. But what makes it extraordinary is this interconnectivity of these other cofactors, including the trace minerals, prebiotic fiber, and of course, no artificial anything. You don't want any artificial coloring, you don't want any artificial flavorings, none of those things that you want within it. For some of you say, well, I'm a vegan, I'm a vegetarian. Congratulations, sort of. Or you say, I have lactose intolerance or milk allergies. Great. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you, again, in collaboration with some of the greatest minds in nutritional science, the formula for what I'm holding in my hand, which is a vegan shake that is like no other you probably have found. Most vegan shakes today are comprised of a pea protein. Now that's not bad, except that a pea protein vegan shake falls so short of the amino acid profiles that we need that, again, it takes a combination of ingredients in order to make this from a good vegan shake into what your body actually needs, giving it 100%, including the amino acid profile, which most vegans have a real trouble meeting the minimum requirements of the amino acids necessary. So what would you do? In addition to having a pea protein, definitely you want to add something called hemp, a hemp protein. And in addition to hemp protein, we recommend that you also add sprouts to it, and you add the 70 trace minerals. That is so critical that, again, you have those trace minerals to enhance the effect of your vegan shake. I mentioned the word toxin hunter, and a lot of people go, what the heck is a toxin hunter? Well, let's go back to glutathione for a moment and explain how critically important and how invaluable glutathione is to the human body. The body doesn't want toxins in it. The body doesn't want to be deficient. The body wants all of these cofactors to work together to help the body, assist it in getting rid of this stuff. What a toxin hunter does basically is that the glutathione molecule attaches itself to a toxin and basically pulls it apart, makes it water soluble, can flow out of the body. Now that sounds really good. The problem is when we've introduced all these herbicides and these pesticides and these chemicals into our world, we're beginning to use up glutathione at rapid rates. So we send it a molecule of glutathione, it attaches to that molecule of toxicity, and then it goes out the body. But the problem is now you've diminished the amount of glutathione that you have. See, people ask me all the time about the protocol, do I have to do this for the rest of my life? And I go, no, wait a minute. We now know in studies, a study done by the American Red Cross, that newborn infants are coming into the world with 287 toxic chemicals in their cord blood, including mercury, iodine, arsenic, gasoline byproducts, Teflon, Scotchgard, herbicides, pesticides, and so forth and so on. Now, in order for the body to combat those, it has to use up stores of glutathione. So the reason that these super whey protein shakes from New Zealand are so critical is that they allow the body to make way more glutathione. So as we begin to use up glutathione, in come the replacements, as long as we continue to consume these super shakes from New Zealand that continue to replenish and rebuild and fortify and reinforce these armies of glutathione that are being diminished as they do their job. So by combining these cofactors of the trace mineral with the amino acid to allow the body to make more glutathione, that's an incredible thing. But you can't take a vacation. You can't take Friday off or Monday off or Saturday off or Sunday off. You've got to have a constant supply of this whey protein or the vegan protein to allow the body to produce large quantities of glutathione to deal with this massive destruction that's being caused by toxicity in and of itself. Do you want to take that chance? Do you want to take that risk? And you wonder why you're tired, exhausted, you don't have the stamina you used to, you can't sleep at night, your stress levels, and you've got weight that you can't lose? Well, as we begin to put in our body things that look and sound like food that really aren't, no wonder we're having these problems. So again, why in the world would you not want to give your body absolutely